and then we will get started. And hello, Marcus, who's just messaged and said hello. Okay, it's 5 past now, so we'll get started, and then anyone else who wants to join can join as we go. Seeing this is all kind of open for everyone to kind of jump in at any time. So, hi everyone, my name is Becky. I am one of the organizers of sthlm.js, and I am so glad that you could join us for our first ever online meetup. This event came about when Peter from Acast messaged me and suggested that we try and put a bit of normality back into people's lives so people can kind of still do some of the things that they used to do before the whole COVID situation happened. And I thought it was a great idea. So, and I'm really pleased that Acast could have helped us get this going and get this to happen today. So thank you for joining us, and thank you to Acast. So we're here, and it's going to be a great night. We'll start with an intro from Mady, who will tell you a little bit more about Acast, and then we'll dive into our first talk. There'll be a small break of about 5–10 minutes where you can kind of go and get another cup of tea or a beer or go to the toilet, and then we'll jump into the second talk after that. It's the same setup as we always do. So the first talk, we'll do the first talk, then we'll have a question and answer session. The Q&A function is there, ready for you to ask questions in. You can ask questions at any time during the talk, but we will collate them and then we'll just go through them at the end. So feel free to just keep putting your questions in. There's also an upvote function. So if somebody's already asked the question that you were going to ask, then you can always upvote it so that it definitely gets answered. Okay, I think that's all the kind of housekeeping. So I will hand over to Mady. Yeah, let's get started.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Becky. Let's see if I can get this working. Screen share and then play. So I'm counting on people to like scream out loud if you can't see my screen or anything, but people look happy. Yes? Okay, great. So welcome to Acast is what I would say if we were actually in our office right now, but since we're hosting this meetup, that's what I'll say anyway. My name is Mady, and I am a software engineer here at Acast. And more specifically, I work actually as an Android developer in the team that builds our listener products. And I'm just going to take like very few short minutes to introduce Acast as a company to sort of give you some context on who's hosting this meetup today. So very briefly, Acast is a podcasting company, which you may already be aware of. We are a one-stop shop for everything podcast related, like from hosting and distributing and monetizing, delivering audio, stitching ads, and then building those awesome listening experiences that you've seen in our apps and on the web. We've been around since 2014. We actually just celebrated our 6th birthday a few days ago. And we're now just over, or maybe quite a bit over 200 people now, actually, in 8 offices worldwide, but a few more cities and some people work from home. And being spread out like this across the globe isn't really a problem for us because we have a remote first culture, which means that we're actually pretty used to being on Zoom all day and having our webcam switched on during meetings and yeah, making sure that nobody's left out just because they're not in the room. But yeah, since we're all developers here, I thought I would just wrap this intro up with just a few words about our approach to tech and engineering here at Acast. And it's obviously important to us since there are quite a few technical challenges to the stuff we do. So first of all, we like to work in autonomous teams with lots of cross-functional people, and each team is free to choose their own tools and technologies. And it also means that each team is responsible for their own services and CI/CD setup. And yeah, it's a pretty cool way to achieve freedom with responsibility, which I hope is an idiom in English too. But yeah, furthermore, we aim to be like cloud agnostic, and we don't like to lock ourselves into a vendor, but most of the things that we do have deployed in the cloud right now are Docker containers running Node managed by Amazon ECS. But we also like serverless solutions like AWS Lambdas and the like. And also every team being responsible for their own tech makes it obviously more important to for each team to be able to spend time improving their own infrastructure. And this also means that we want to make sure to automate away all those like tedious tasks that we don't want to be spending our time on. So we use bots like Renovate to keep our dependencies up to date, and infrastructure as code using AWS CDK to automate deployments and such. And there's like, yeah, there's a lot of information and all of that. And there's a lot more that I could say also about tech here at Acast. And if this piqued your interest, you can check out a Medium article about engineering at Acast that was posted a few days ago. But considering the meetup we're in, I'll just end on the note that Acast is very much a JavaScript shop, and JS is in our entire tech stack, from our Node services to our front-end applications written in React. And yeah, as I said, each team is free to choose their own frameworks, but there are also benefits from having most of our front-end applications written in React. And it definitely has made it easier for us to knowledge share and build like libraries of common components. And this is actually the theme of the first actual tech talk of the evening. And with that, I will hand it over to my colleague, Antoine.
Thank you, Mary. So official.
All
All right, just need to go through the dance of sharing my screen.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, I will assume the same as Mary. If no one screams, and I think everyone see my screen. All right, so I'm Antoine Lehurt. I'm a staff software engineer at Acast, but I'm mainly focused on our front-end stack. And if you wonder what a staff software engineer does at Acast, it's basically 50% of coding in my team. I work on the team in charge of the product for listeners with Maybe. And 50% of our time mentoring and helping other teams in their technical decision. You can find me on different social networks with my nickname Kyowa, and sometimes, not that often, I write articles on my personal blog. And today, I'm going to talk about design system, and more precisely, our journey to build our design system at Acast that we call Decibel. But before diving into Decibel, I just want to rewind a little and explain what led us to build a design system. So as Mehdi said, at Acast we've always worked as in autonomous way, where each team was free to choose the tools they want, and we also want to limit dependencies between teams. So we are okay to have some duplicated code happening between teams. Because often having dependencies between teams slow down our process to ship software. So you can think about when you get a bug reported to your team, but you didn't jump on it right away. That means that one team is waiting for you to do something, and in the meantime they might be blocked, might not be able to ship anything. But the thing of duplication has some implication also on the front end, in terms of UI. It means that each team re-implement the same components, same UI over and over again. So it means that it takes some time to start up a new project on the client side, and more importantly, you might end up with like the UI that is kind of the same, but not exactly the same. Like we base our work on the same Figma sources, same designers, but when two developers implement the same UI, you don't exactly get the same thing. And the same for the UX. And it can be tricky when we have users using different products maintained by different teams, but at the end is the same user. Like for instance, we have two products. One we call Create. That's the tools for podcasters to publish their episodes. And another one is Insights, which is kind of like the Google Analytics for podcasts, like we built at Acast. So it's the same target, same consumer, but when you use the application, like you had some different navigation patterns and different. The UI kind of looks the same, but it was quite confusing to not have the same design. And in the beginning of 2018, the product management team started to talk about like bundling our offering, like instead of having like plenty of products, kind of like just offer like at least give the feeling to the customer that they have like one big product that will cover like different needs. And that meant for us that we needed to unify the UI and UX, and that's when we started to look at about design systems. So what is a design system? I like this definition from an article from InVision. A design system is a collection of reusable components guided by clear standards that can be assembled together to build any number of applications. So there's two things in here that compose a design system. First, that the component library, the reusable components. And the second part is design principles, which it's kind of like a big umbrella because it covers like different things, like it's UX patterns, it's animation recommendation, it's the tone that we want to have in our text when we show messages to the end users. Like it's different guidelines like that that can be shared. But for today, I will only focus on the component library part, which is what we built in the front-end group. So then when we had this discussion about unifying and starting a design system, like we need to set up like a specific purpose for our design system. Like you can't aim to cover everything on the first go. So like since it's part of the needs, the first goal is to unify the UI and the UX across our different products maintained by different teams. And it's also, since we want to cover like different needs, the UI needs to be composable and extendable. And we also wanted to include like a great accessibility support. Like empathy is part of our company core values, and we wanted to like live up to the expectation of the company for that, like having empathy for our colleagues, but also for our customers. So anyone who wants to create or listen to a podcast should be able to use our product. And the last one is to speed up development. Like as mentioned before, when we start a new project, you have kind of like go through the re-implementing your own library and component library and stuff like that. So, and we want to also to improve the collaboration between designer and developers by sharing the same language. Like we could simply like include like a combo box in that area, and both sides will know exactly what we're referring as a component in terms of combo box. So that means that designers in Figma will reuse the same type of component that front ends would have built for the web. And the dream scenario would be that designers don't have to sketch on Figma like prototypes, that we could usually like pair designer and developer and build new interfaces. But that's the dream scenario. We are not there yet. So now that we know what we want to achieve, the goal of our design system, the question is like, how much we build ourselves? There are several factors that we need to take into account when we start a design system. And the first one is depends on which stage of the company is. Like early startup don't have the same challenges and scale up. And it also depends on like what resources you have at hand. Like, do you have front-end specialists? Do people enjoy working on the UI and stuff like that? So I can think of like 3 different approach for building your design system. I will go from the least amount of investment on our side and to the most expensive. So the first one is open source design system. like there's big ones like Material Design by Google and Design by Alibaba. And I think it's a great solution when like your startup, you just want to get on the market, and using this type of solutions, like you can just focus on your business value, and you don't have to spend time like to figure out your UI. Like you follow like paved ground, and you don't necessarily need to have like a front-end specialist in your team to get something up and running on the client side. And also, like, even if you don't plan to use open source design system, I think it's still worth checking the design principle that they share on their documentation. Like they contain valuable information that you can apply yourself to your own design system. Like I really like the one from Material Design about animation. Like they have very great value about like the tempo and what to do and what not to on time of animations. So it's like learning that you can apply also on your own design system. But there's also some limitation with that approach. Like often, like I haven't tried all the open source design system, but for those that I've tried, like you are limited when it comes to theming. Like you can basically only override colors and fonts. So it all depends on how much you want to customize your user to make your product unique. And another thing is like, it might lack accessibility supports. Like that was something that pushed us back 2 years ago when we reviewed it and when we were starting to work on our design system, because things have evolved in the past few years. Like accessibility gets more and more acknowledged by developers working on design systems, so it gets more often included and has better support today. But 2 years ago, that was our main issue with this approach. So the second approach is the what we call the headless libraries. Plus, you build your own UI on top of it. So there is kind of like two approaches in that one too. It's like the first is you can there's like the low-level component libraries, like for instance React. There's others, but that's the one that comes to my mind. They often focus on accessibility, and they provide like a component that you can style yourself. It's like React is kind of like the first approach, but then you have more freedom towards the UI and maybe less support in terms of design guidelines. The second part is like you can bundle several libraries together, like use libraries that focus just on one problem that they try to solve. Just to give a few examples, so the one on the left is Popper.js, and it's a great library for handling like model or tooltip. Like it handles the positioning, and you don't have to like take care about what's happening when the user resizes the screens. It will always like take care of like positioning correctly and where the space fits the best. And you have the full freedom about designing your tooltip and what you want to put inside it. So it's another one is React table. I don't know if you ever tried to build like your own table, but there's a lot of things to include in the table, like table ordering, filtering, and whatnot. And React table is great for that. Like it provides a lot of built-in features, and the same, like you build your own UI on top of it. And the last one that I also really like is Rich UI. It provides unstyled accessible components. Unfortunately, like we didn't know about it until a few months ago, so we didn't base our design system on that. But I think it's a great option when you get started and you want to go down to this approach of headless libraries. Like Rich UI like provides you a lot of components that, like I don't know if you've tried to do like a combo box, accessible combo box. Like it's inputs, you have auto completion, you can select different elements. That's a lot of work and a lot of states to keep and to maintain to have an accessible component, like just for accessibility. And that's something that Rich UI can provide you. So on the benefits, like you can choose the tool that you want for a specific job. You are not limited in the look and feel that you want to give in your app. And that could be a good approach. Like if you already have customers and you want to start to make like your brand more visible and more unique. So that could be a way to go. But on the other hand, like since you have you choose more tools for different jobs, then you have more to maintain also, and you need to spend sometimes to keep them up to date. And the last strategy is the do-it-yourself, build everything. I guess it's great when you have companies that reach the stage where they can afford it. You have full control about what you want to build. I mean, it's useful if you can, like, if you want to align your UI and UX across like multiple platforms, like mobile and web and TV, then you have the full control over that. But on the other hand, like, if it's for big companies, then it means like it's a big investment and it requires a lot of time and resources to be able to reach a point where you have something very valuable and useful for the company. And so for Decibel, we decided to go down the road of headless libraries. Like I mentioned, with the design system, our issue was the lack of support of accessibility. So going to the headless strategy, that would allow us to try to build accessible component without having to reinvent the wheel for everything while building Decibel. So how do we structure and organize our work with Decibel? So there's two different workflows. Like generally, when companies start to work on design system, they adopt like a centralized workflow where one team will dedicate that time on building and maintaining the component library. So it's the good thing is like it allows to have like a clear sense of ownership on the project. Like you have one team responsible to it, you know who is going to be working on it, you have a point of contact. But on the other hand, it can also create the warden words. Like it's the teams consuming the library might feel that they are not welcome to contribute. And they might also feel that their needs might not be aligned with the current focus of the design system team. And you could end up where teams prefer to like do overrides and create their own design system on their side, so they don't have to deal or like bug report the design system team. And in my experience, it happens more than you would think. So instead, we decided to follow like a decentralized workflow at Acast. We want to have gardeners and not gatekeepers. Like everyone should feel a sense of ownership and feel that they can easily contribute to the component library, so they can feel that like we can promote the voice control around the project. Like if you find something broken that's not someone else's problem, like you have to go to the root and fix it so everyone can benefit from it. And since you have more people involved, it's also like help to share the knowledge around the company for like the type of component that's available, what other teams might need, and also like it also helped to share knowledge about like front end and accessibility practices, and that's a great opportunity. Like when your company is growing, it's often like knowledge gets isolated in each team, and you never have this like opportunity to spread the knowledge and like good practices and how you should be building your client side and stuff like that. So it's been a great way for us in the front-end group at Acast to be able to share common knowledge. But there is obviously like drawbacks with this approach, and it's really important to have like ceremonies or rituals so people like feel a sense of belonging, because since it's like open source but in-house, so you really have to have a good channel of communication. Most of our communication happen in GitHub issues, but we have also like every once like 1 hour every week we have a meeting where we can discuss progress, issues, needs, anything that could be needed for your team on the design on the component library. And we also promote the cross-team pair programming for given tasks. Like if you need help, if you have a PR that takes too much time, then because we really want to like keep a good velocity on the product, we don't want to wait like 2 weeks to get the PR merged. So pairing on an issue helps to get that done quickly, and you don't have to stress too much about what you're going to include in the work that you're going to do in it. Yeah, so when everything is ready, like how did we got started? So at Acast, we do sometimes what we call focus week. The idea of a focus week is like you allow the team to cut all distraction away. And so since we are a remote first company, we often like flies people to the same location. And like we can like rent an office space, or if we can't fly everyone, then we can also like just make it clear to the rest of the organization that during that week, this team won't reply to any incoming requests. And we did that for Decibel when we started Decibel. And the goal for this focus week for us was to create alignments because we gather like the different people from different teams. So we could like create an alignment about what we want to accomplish with Decibel. And also with the goal to build few components in the component library, and also refactor one project to include it in production. Like kind of, we just like to try to get a momentum happening around the projects, so we don't drop the ball as soon as we get started. And during the focus, we also tried a different rhythm. The goal with this rhythm of 4-hour sprints was we only plan for the coming hours, and we only take decisions that are related to that. So it's avoid us to spend like too much time overthinking about something. Like you work on the task and you try to get something that you can demo after the 4 hours. It also like promotes something that is very important for Acast, like continuous delivery, and to be able to fail fast and experiment quickly. That was like, for me, was quite challenging, like to spend 4 hours and like what can I demo in 4 hours, but it was very valuable for us to try to get this momentum happening and get the team started to work on Decibel. So yeah, I'm gonna now like reach a point where I talk about tech and not just about organization. Yeah, so on the UI side, we use React. Like React was a natural choice for us. All our client-side projects use it, so it's kind of a good fit. And React is also a great choice for building like a component library, because the entire idea of React is built around components. And if I have one tip to give when you build a component library with React, is to try to build what is called like components. That's the idea that you can combine multiple components together, and they're going to share state and measure logic together. Like if you look at on the right-hand side, like you have 3 components: tabs, tab list, tabs, and tab panel, and they share one common set, which is a selected tab, like which one to highlight and which panel to show. And on the left side, it's an approach where we can say like it's just a component, and you just have one component and you pass all the data down to it. So the issue with a non-compound components when you build a library is like you have to move a lot of logic that belongs to the application into your component library. Like your component library has to assume a lot of things. Like you need to be aware about the data shape that you're passing down. And also like every time you want to bring a change to your components, you have to go through a prop. Like if one team like, oh, the tabs instead to be on top, they have to be at the bottom, saying like, okay, let's add a props name like tab position and etc. And then you quickly end up with a component that have like 10, 15 props, and it's very hard to maintain on the component on the library side. So the idea is to like invert the responsibility between the app and the component library. So your library will only expose UI component that the consumer like can combine to create like what they need to do with it. So they're gonna have to be responsible for the rendering, like going through the data and then render the components. And so you completely leave the logic outside of your component library, so it's easier to maintain, and it also gives more freedom and flexibility to the consumer side, because like, with the previous example, like you want to put the tab list underneath, and you can just swap the DOM node and it's going to do the job. But if you want to go more deep into the subject, like Ryan Florence has a great talk a few years ago where he goes through like refactoring and explaining why you should go like using components when you build library. On the UI side, for styling, we use style components. Because with Decibel, like we wanted to build a component-oriented library, like so everything is a component. And CSS.js like provides you that out of the box. Like when you create a style, that's a component. So you don't have to create your CSS in one side and then create another component that will just like include the class name into it. And you get some benefits out of the box, like you can build modular and reusable styles. The CSS hash, the class names, they got hashed, so it prevents the consumer to be able to target the classes for like writing tests, because you don't want to break your app test just because you change one class on the component library. Like class name, in my opinion, is an implementation detail, so you should not surface that into the test. And you also get free shaking, meaning that the consumer, like you're going to provide more components that they might use. So you want to make sure that you don't include components that you are not using into your final bundle. So it's important to be able to tree shake. The main reason that we use style component into Decibel was because the teams started to adopt it. When we reached a point where we're like, okay, all teams, like before we had people using Sass, and then by the end, I think like 2017, people started to adopt like CSS and JS, like emotion style component, and everyone kind of converged to use style components, like with like we were talking about it, showing blah blah blah. So we thought that it would be good for us to align with what the teams are using, and so it avoids to have like too much context switch when you work on your app and then you contribute to Decibel. And that also is the workflow when you want to migrate one of the components you have in your application into Decibel. But we spend some time like evaluating Linaria, which is another CSS and JS solution. Because when we first started to talk about what we wanted to do with Decibel, in the first place, well, we didn't want to force teams to like go for one solution about like how they wanted to style. Like we didn't want to force people to have to include a JavaScript runtime like style components. So Linaria was a kind of like the good candidate for it. It's a CSS and JS solution, and you can build the static CSS file on the real time. So compared to style component, it was like a better fit on paper. But yeah, since everyone got aligned, then we kind of like followed the company trend. But I mean, like if we use style components, also because we enjoy working with it, and it's a great library for building your interface. And one thing we combine it with, it's style system. It's a library that you add on top of style components, and it provides nice API for overriding the style on your components. And it allows you like to specify which properties, attributes, CSS attributes that you like allow. It's more like you pass a contract between the consumer of your library and you as a maintainer of the library, even if for us it's the same people, but like you by explicit, like being explicit about it's fine to override the spacing, like which is margin, padding, and other attributes like that. Then you know that if you do a change later on your API, then you have to care about it if you don't want to do a breaking change. So for instance, on ML for margin right, and 2 is for the 2 times the unit space, and for us the units 1 is 4, so it's 8 pixels. But if you want to like override the color, then since we didn't explicitly pass it to the box, then nothing's going to happen. And so if you want to support the color override, then you need to specify it on your at your component level in your library. And we prefer that approach because it's possible with style component to like you can extend your component and then change the CSS in it, and it's gonna work. But it's more to write, and also you can lose the contract. Like you kind of like it's harder to keep track about which one you need to think about when you are like updating your component, because then it's like open door to everything. So it's a good practice, and it's also like a nicer way of writing your components. A second tip when you build, because it's something that we encounter while we were working with Decibel, is that you should avoid to include outer margin on your components. Like it makes composition way harder, and you also put a lot of assumption when you're building your components that, for instance, this section is going to have automatically like 18% of margin bottom, because that's how it should be. Like, but then it's very hard when you want to build an application with that, because then you might end up with a case where the last section in the list should not have margin. So you have to override it every time you do that. So what we promote instead with Decibel is you use like a stack component, like a layout component that will manage that, like how you want your layout to behave to like display your section in that case. So we call it box. Maybe there's better names. And on this box, like you define that you need 3 margins between your section. And it's also like you can play nicely when you start to think about responsive design. That like accessibility is not really like a technology, but it's more like, since it was important for us, I wanted to include it in the talk. It's not necessarily like, there's like accessibility is a different knowledge space in the front end area. Like when we got started with like most of us just knew the basic, like, oh, you need to put the alt on your image, like you put the ARIA label and stuff like that. But like there's a lot to learn, and there's like resources on W2C with the specs that we spent a lot of time reading to make sure that the components that we are building are accessible, and the automation, like being able to make sure that we are following the spec. They're still at early stage. Like there's no magic around that. Like you have to do manual testing, but like one would say it's the same when you build UI. Like it's seldom that you just write your test and hope for the best when you are deploying. Like you always go through the browser and you click around to make sure that it behaves as expected, and that's the same. So it adds another layer of manual testing. Like you need to run the screen reader and make sure that the component is usable with that. But there's still like there's a suite of plugins from Acast that are still like quite useful to get some ground covered. So there's like one on Firefox and Chrome that you can install, and also a React plugin that you can install. It's gonna so it's gonna like display error messages in your dev tool when you're navigating your app, so you can like directly see like, oh, you're missing something here. So it's quite useful like to be able to know like beforehand without having to build everything and then have to do the manual testing and be like, oh shit, I forgot about this. And there's also like a Cypress plugin for doing integration tests, and it's kind of the same logic. You visit your website and then you navigate around, and then you run this check ali function, and it's gonna fail if there is some reports, and it uses the same API and same way that you can get with the plugins. So it's still nice to use, but you need to expect to do more manual testing. Yeah, and since we want more people to contribute, and like we need to provide like confidence about like when you contribute, you want to make sure that you're not breaking anything. So it means that you need to have a good testing strategy in your library. When we started Decibel, we were using Enzyme as the engine for unit testing. And last year we started to adapt React testing library, not only about this in Decibel, but also in the rest of the company. Because we think that React testing libraries help us to write better tests. The main reason is like it's harder to write tests that test the implementation details. Like the issue with Enzyme is like it provides a lot of things that can, like a lot of API and utils that can that give you access to the internal states of your components, and you don't need that to write tests. Like your tests should only reflect what the user is using, like it's user action, and not like you should not go down to the implementation detail, because it's going to be also hard to be able to refactor a component. So it's really like when we write tests, we really focus on relying on what the user see, or like using accessibility attributes to be able to trigger actions or do test assertion. And at the same time, we also try to avoid to use snapshot testing. Like snapshot testing is quite popular in the React community because it's kind of like you mount your component and then snapshot test, and you get a full snapshot of your entire DOM tree of this component. It's like, great, I have test coverage now. But the thing is, like, it's super easy to break this type of test, and it doesn't give the developer any information about what is important about the test, and it doesn't help you to catch a bug, because as soon as you change something, like you change a div to a span, it breaks your test. Like, and when you come after someone else and you get this test failing, you're like, I don't know if it's something important, and then just press update and hope for the best. Someone's gonna catch catch it on the pull request. So it kind of gives you like a false sense of security because you think that your component is tested. Yeah, you don't get that much of valuable information with the snapshot testing, especially since it easily gets big when you do snapshot testing on the components. But instead, like we tried to do like explicit assertions, like on this one where we explicitly said that we want to test the IR attribute. So if the IR attribute, you're refactoring the component and the IR attribute fails, then you know that you did something wrong. So for instance, like this snippet is like written with enzyme, like, but the bad way. Like we go through the, we use the API to test, like update the internal states of your components. And at the same, like, should your test fail because you rename the states from selected to is selected? Like it doesn't change anything for the user, like your test should not fail for that. And then after that, you do run a snapshot test on the entire component. And same, like you changed a tag name from div to a span. It's like your test is failing. You won't catch a bug with that. But in the other hand, with React testing library, you can, like you select the button using what the user is going to see, like the label of the button, and then you trigger like a click, like the user would do, and then you check the data attributes. Like you want to make sure that the tab is visible in that case. But you could agree that with Enzyme, you can write this type of test too. Like Enzyme is also a great library for testing, but the issue with Enzyme is like it provides so much that you can easily write bad tests. Like with React testing library, you can't write this type of tests on the top. But so that's why, like, it's with React testing library, it's like you make sure that everyone that contributes is able to write like valuable tests, and you don't have to have like someone with a lot of experience in testing to be able to provide that. Like the API is helping you with React testing library. So that's also why it kind of spread quickly into the org when we started to adopt a React testing library in Decibel, because people started to see the value of it. And the last one is Storybook. Like we love Storybook. It's a great tool for like when you're developing your components isolation. You have like this, what they call knobs. You can like put different states, you can toggle them, and you will see your component right there, like being updated. So it's great for you when you start to develop the component, because you can see it happening live and you can like interact with this, how it could be done in the application. And it's also great for the other person coming after you, because you have already these props and you can see and interact with it. And the other good thing is, because if you want to have your component library being used in different teams in your company, then you need to have a good documentation about how to use the component. And the good thing with Storybook is that you can make the documentation and the playground like living next to each other. So you can focus the documentation about like different properties and like the do's and don'ts and examples, and have the playground like for people to know like how it looks and how to use it. So I highly recommend that tool for even like if you don't build a component library like on your project. Like it's great to be able to build your components in isolation. So yeah, like we've covered a lot of ground since this focus week like a year and a half ago, but there's still lots for us to do and improve with Decibel. So it's kind of like few action points that we need to go through. So we would like to extend the component like more than core components. We would like to have like components that are able to fulfill UX needs, because right now we focused on the core level of each component, and then as soon as you need to do like a more rich component, like every team has to re-implement the same type component to come up with the same outcome. And we also need to improve our collaboration with the designers. Up to today, up to recently, we only had 2 designers, so it was kind of easy for them to know what they had in the component library and what each team was using, because they were working with everyone in each team. And now we're also scaling the design team, so it means that we will need to write down all the design principles that we've been keeping right now so far into the people's head about how you're supposed to use the different components and how to combine them together. And we will also want to apply the design system at a larger scale in the company. Like if you remember, like when we started to work on Decibel, it was because we had a product need to unify the UI and UX. And this project was targeting specific type of product in the company, even if more teams that weren't necessarily in that unifying projects happened to be using the design system because they enjoyed to contribute and use it. It's highly coupled to what we wanted to do in that project. So it's hard when you have a product that is not aligned with the UI or not the same type of like, it's like a lot of dashboards, tables. So if you don't have this type of project in your team, then it's harder for you. It's almost impossible for you to be able to use Decibel. And we would like to be able to provide teams the same set of tools to be able to be more productive in when they work on their projects. Or maybe it's like we should not do that and create a different type of design system that will base on existing design system or start a new one. We need to find out what is the best solution for us. And finally, it's to continue to improve like how to contribute to the component library. Like so far we had around like 20 members of Acast contributing. So like today we're like around 60 engineers in the company. So it's quite a good ratio. It's more than we had front-end specialists. So it's a good sign. But we still want to continue to improve to lower the barrier to help people to contribute. Like we strongly believe that if we get more people on board, then that will make this project more successful in the company, and then that we are able also to help us to keep growing this design system to provide to help all teams to be able to move faster on the front-end side. And that's it for me. I guess it's time for Q&A now.
Hey.
Hey.
Thank you for that. There was like a virtual round of applause. I feel that that's the one thing that Zoom is missing, is the kind of the buttons with the, yeah. So yeah, we have a couple of questions. Firstly, thank you for that talk. The idea of kind of building a design system for me is kind of overwhelming. The amount of work that must go into it with planning and stuff is just mind-blowing. And it feels like you're still on the path to kind of getting to where you want to go. So you're not really there yet, but it seems like you've put in an immense amount of work so far. So yeah, yeah, I'm kind of in awe of it at the moment. Okay, thanks. So we've got a couple of questions. So the first question is, have you considered keeping separation of concerns between CSS and JS by creating component level styles that are only compiled if the consumer uses the component?
Not sure so by creating component level styles that are only compiled if the consumer uses the components. No, I don't think, like we haven't done that. I think it's valuable when you don't have a JavaScript runtime. Because for us, like with style components, it's as long as you don't include your style into the bundle, then it won't be run. But it might be a good approach when you have like CSS files that you don't want to include in the final bundle, if I understand your question correctly. But it's something that we aim also when we build different layers of like we follow the atomic analogies. I've forgotten the name of the guy who introduced it, but like we go to the atom and then you build molecules and yada yada. So we try to split like the components that have behaviors and move the one we have more focus on the UI. But we don't have the only on compile time.
Okay, great.
But
cool.
I would be interested to hear about
yeah.
something that Thiago is doing.
Yeah.
That's good learning also to see how people are doing in their own design system.
Yeah, maybe we can kind of chat about it later. Okay, next one is from Albin, who asks, how do you test the visuals of your components and not just the by unit and not only unit testing? Sorry.
Right now we mainly have manual testing. That's cumbersome, and we want also to fix that because in Teams we use Cypress, but we haven't implemented it on the design system. So that's yeah, that's a bummer. But right now it's mostly manual testing, and you can go far with React testing library when it comes to, like, it's almost a integration test library. The only big difference with Cypress, it doesn't run in the browser, so you can't really make sure that you are not like it doesn't break in the browser, and something that you should be covering with Cypress.
Okay, cool. And Bjorn asks, how did you start? Is there a way to find some value early on in the process before you have a full-blown design system in place?
Yeah, that's a good one. I had that in my talk, but I skipped it. I forgot to mention. No, yeah, we, like, after the focus week, like, we had a few components, but that was like, we had a button and some navigation elements. So it was like mostly to get like this momentum happening. But then after, like, we didn't want to spend like 6 months to build all components. We didn't want to spend like 6 months to build all the components to start to use them. So it was like, after the focus week, it was each team starting to contribute on their hand. And so you were picking up the component that you were needing, and you were building it for everyone. And we were aiming to do this, like, I guess we have like what we call the MVP mindset. Like, we try to promote the MVP mindset, where you try to put things in production so your customer can start to use it, so you can learn from it. And we wanted to apply the same thing on the design system. So as soon as you have a component, you push it to production, and then you update your projects to implement these new components. The downside is, like, you end up with this in-between state on the UI in your product, but it's also, it helped us a lot in the beginning to create, like, figure out what type of API we wanted to have, and like, get these feedbacks that you would have not gotten if you would have waited like 6 months, or it would be too late, like too much refactor. So yeah, we started one release with one component, and then so gradually we had more and more, and spending sometimes, like, it was not also like we didn't spend 6 months just focusing on that. It was on the side. You could spend like 1 sprint, 2 sprints working on your features, and then you could spend like a few days on that, building the components, including them in Decibel, and then release them. Like, we even for Decibel, we aim for CI/CD. Like, you open your PR, you merge it to master, and then it gets deployed directly to. We use GitHub packages, and then like everyone can use it. So yeah. So yeah, we started with a design system with just one component in production.
Okay, fantastic. Cool, that's all the questions. So thanks again for a great talk. And if anyone else has any more questions, we'll find a way to kind of hook you up with them. I don't know if there's a good way of getting in touch with you, Twitter or anything like that.
You can go on Twitter, on LinkedIn, wherever you find me, I will do my best to reply. And I'll be really also happy to hear about like everyone going, like their experience working on design system, because as I mentioned at the end, like there's still a lot of ground for us to improve and to scale also the design system. And I'm pretty sure like there's many teams that already went through that and kind of learn from them and apply on our side.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Thanks.
Cool.
Thanks so much. That's great.
Thanks.
Okay. And now we're going to have a short break. I suggest that we kind of come back at 5 past the hour, just to have a break, go to the toilet, get a drink, anything you want to, and then we'll start with Albin's talk. So yeah, see you in a few minutes. Hi, everyone. We're back. And I hope you got another drink and are all ready for the next talk. So the next speaker is Albin. He's going to talk to you today about how the title of the talk is How I'm Building My Own Testing Framework. And yeah, again, if you have any questions, use the Q&A or the chat, and I'll collate them and we'll ask them at the end. So yeah, take it away, Albin.
Yeah, thank you. Can I try to share my screen first there? Something like that, maybe.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so just a really good talk from Antoine. I really liked it. And my last question there about the visual testing kind of leads into my talk, which has to do with visual testing, but maybe more on a higher level of testing your entire pages and not just your components. This is also a visual regression testing framework. So it doesn't replace something like Jest or React testing framework or Mocha or anything like that. Just to make that clear. So my name is Albin, and I work as a web developer at a company called Doer in Västerås, about an hour from Stockholm. I worked here about 7 months now, and you can find me at this tag on pretty much all social media tags. I'm really into open source, the web, performance, design as well. So I do a lot of stuff, but when I started at Doer about half a year ago, I got to work a lot on the public facing marketing page. And that was built in React as well as TypeScript and CSS modules. So a little bit of an older framework, not style components. And we had worked on this new login or like registration page for a pretty long time. And then we released it, and it was all well and good until my boss sent me a text saying this about page is completely broken. And it had nothing to do with what we had been working on. You know, I fixed it, deployed it, and went on. But this happened a couple of times, and it started to get a little bit frustrating. And a couple of months before I started there, I had been on a meetup in Stockholm. Not sure if it was sthlm.js or React Stockholm or something. But a guy called Henrik Trotzig presented his, I don't know if it was new, but he presented this platform called Happo, which I thought was really interesting. And I kind of started to experiment with this to see if I can implement it to our marketing page. But Happo was more aimed for component testing and kind of connected with Storybook more in a way. So I got on the phone with Henrik and we spoke for a while how we could solve this thing, and if we could find some way to use this on just full page testing. And this wasn't really what this product was aimed for in the first place. We also had a lot of issues with TypeScript because our entire page, pretty much our entire company is built on TypeScript, which has both positives and negatives, I suppose. So I went on to building my own testing library. That's really where it all started. I started to implement this on our own page. So basically, it was just a script on the website that was built using Puppeteer, and you would give it a array of pages basically, and the URL, and Puppeteer would spin up a headless Chromium browser and go through each page and just take a full page screenshots. That's one thing that's really nice with Puppeteer, that you can take full page screenshots. So this was good. I could also click on these images, and I could scroll through the entire thing.
Albin, sorry,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt. We only see your first slides. I don't know if you're changing slides till now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now we see something different.
Okay, that's interesting.
There we go.
Yeah, maybe I need to do this. So if I switch back now, do you see this?
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah, we can
see
see
it
that
Okay,
now.
perfect. Yeah, so when I was, this was just what I was showing before. But basically, this is what it looks like. I could see the images and click on this. I will get a pop-up. And after this, I started to implement the functionality to compare screenshots between different environments. Because at Doer, we obviously have a local environment. We have a development environment that's basically the master branch, and as well as staging and the live. So the idea with this was to be able to see if there had been any big regressions. You could just browse the images like this and see, oh, has there been anything? But you had to still like click on everything, scroll through, and it was kind of annoying. So I basically implemented a functionality to specify in the configuration which environments you wanted to use. So you would just enter the URL for each environment, and then Puppeteer would do the exact same thing, but for each environment. And this way, the images would I'm not sure I remember, but I think I just added like a slug to them. So the name of the image, like start or about, and then the environment. So that way I could easily compare two images with these drop downs here. And also you can see the stripe through the start of the image, which was basically a handle that you could drag back and forth and then see the visual difference of your images, which was really nice. At this point, I kind of got really interested in this, and I started to break it out of the website and do a open source version of this. So basically, the architecture of this looked something like this. I knew I was going to have some sort of npm module that the end user, for example, any one of you can install this. And this was basically just a script that I had on my website. So this was more or less done. We obviously just need some authentication, so you can just publish images to anyone's project, and also some sort of backend service for this. I decided to build this in Node, since that's what I'm most comfortable with, and as well a React front end. And this is basically just, so instead of going to this private URL on our website that only we can access, you would get a unique URL that you can visit that's completely separate from your website. So starting off with the npm module, we obviously had the concept of configuration. So you would just supply your pages, the name of the page and the URL of the page, as well as the environment and your API key that you will get from the front-end website. This will start a headless browser, take snapshots of each page on each environment, and then send the image buffers to the server. And then basically the server would upload the image buffer to Cloudinary, because we don't really want to store the images in our database because of several reasons. But with Cloudinary, you can really specify what size do I want this image in, what format do I want it in, do I want to crop this image to make it match the other images. Because one problem I had was that maybe on your local branch the page is really long, but live it's really small. The data in backend might have been updated or something like that. So the aspect ratio might be a little bit weird, and you can account for that with the Cloudinary, which is really nice. And basically after uploading the Cloudinary, you will get a public URL for this image, and you will store that in our database. So I think I made it easy for myself. So I stored one small version, one medium, and one big. So I can basically just pick which one I want. And also this would have the environment key and a name key. So I can easily find this in the front end. Also what I would do is I would use a service called Deep AI, I think, that basically does image similarity. So you would just give this API two URLs of your images, and it would just like give back a number of what's the difference in these images. And if it's more than 0, you can just set, yeah, there's a difference on this image. Then I would remove the old image, the old reference, or basically the old image from Cloudinary to not make it really expensive, basically. Because if you have, let's say you have 20 pages and you have 4 environments, like it can get really expensive fast. So you don't really need the old images. You just need the images of basically the latest image of each environment. And then I would store everything to my database, which is I'm using the MongoDB database. So basically the React frontend, I went a little bit overboard with this, I think, and I implemented a lot of functionality. Basically, the most necessary functionality is the project page, and the project page is basically the page that I had on our marketing page from the beginning, just more optimized. And yeah, I implemented theme functionality, obviously API keys, profiles, and a lot of stuff that probably wasn't necessary. Yeah, basically the dashboard looked something like this. So actually, this is fun. This goes back a little bit to Antoine's talk. I used the Ant design library built by Alibaba, and I think it's really good to just get something started. You don't have to think a lot about how things look and how things interact. They've thought of that already, and they give you some basic theming options like colors and border radius and that sort of things. So as you can see here, we have a couple of different projects. So the idea here is you can create how many projects you want, and you will get one API key for each project. And you can also see here that there's a red dot with a 1 inside of it. This indicates that there's been a difference in some image in this project. So you can easily see where there has been a difference or not. Yeah, and so the project page looks something like this. Some statistics and your API key, and also the main part, which is the images here. And you can also see here there's a red border around the image, just indicating that this image differs from some other environment. And so when you click on this image, you will basically get a pop-up here, and you can choose your environment and basically just slide through and see what diff has occurred. And this just makes it super easy to see in a glance what's changed. And something I want to just touch a little bit on here is the use of images instead of background images. Because in the first version on our marketing page, I wanted to make each image the same ratio. Let's say like 400 times 300 pixels, and I would do this with background images. And this worked in the start, but after a while, when you have a couple of images, it gets really slow for some reason. I don't really know why it is. I think somehow the full resolution is still loaded into the page, but it just kind of shrinks it all it can. And I debugged this a lot. For some reason, just images worked better. So what I did to make each image the same size, and because otherwise you can have like one image that's really long, and you have one really small like login page and one landing page that's really long, and then you would have like this really weird grid situation going on. So I changed to using just regular images and specifying in the Cloudinary config what format or like the resolution and the cropping, how that should work, which works really great, and the performance is so much better. Previously, you could barely like browse through more than 3 images, and it would just crash for some reason. I guess maybe it works if you use background images and the Cloudinary specification, but I never really tried that. Maybe that works. So let's see, how do you integrate this as an end user? Basically, this whole product was pretty tricky actually to get this all integrated and work seamlessly, because this is by far the biggest thing I've ever done for myself, like in programming. But it was really satisfying to get the whole thing tied together and make the flow work, and basically just make my work way easier. So the user can just run yarn add UI diff, which is the name of the project. It would supply their configuration files, the pages and the API keys and the environments, and then go into the React platform to create their project. And yeah, the API key comes from there, and then they just run yarn screenshot in the terminal, and they will get the URL, and they can just go to compare their images. So some things that are still missing, and that's really the next level, is pull request integration. Because what's really good with something like Happo or Chromatic or anything like that, that's maybe more towards the component testing. is that when you do a pull request, you will get a notification in the PR or a comment in the PR saying, yeah, there's been some sort of visual regression on this component, and that's a really nice bonus you can get. I have been trying to implement that, but I haven't really focused a lot of time on that. So I thought I will try to do a bit of a demo to show you how easy this is. Let's hope this this goes as planned. I'm going to start by stopping the share, and then I'm going to share my desktop. Do you see things now? Someone can answer.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to draw in here. I have made this little Gatsby site here. So if we run this, we hopefully get something on screen. Maybe this is a bad idea. I don't know. Okay. So this is the site right now. This is actually just an image here. And what we're going to do is we're going to install the package here. I think it's already installed. But and in the meantime, we can go to the React platform, where I have already created a project here, sthlm.js Acast. And here we have the API key. So let's see if this is finished. Not yet. Maybe that was not. Okay, soon. So here you can see I have two files, UI-diff config and the UI-diff pages. So here you basically enter your pages and the route. And here we have entered our environments, the local environment, and also the live environment. Let's just check that the live works here.
Albin, somebody asked if you can kind of zoom in on the text on the
yeah,
VS Code. Yeah, just.
Oh, perfect. Like that, maybe? Maybe.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, so I was just saying these are the pages you enter and their configuration. It's fairly simple, and I already entered the API key here. Okay, so this is the live version, and this is the local version. So right now everything is the same. I'm thinking we're going to make some changes to the site here. So I have prepared this. So we're just going to add this h1 here, and it will just add this clutter here. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to run yarn screenshot here. Let's hope this works. Okay, so we can now go back here, and hopefully we will have an image here now. Yeah, just like that. So what we can do now is we can do something like this, and then we can compare the difference between these two images and see what have changed. So that's really how easy it is to do this. And for some reason, I didn't get a red border around this, which I thought I might have got. This is an old version of this platform, so there might be some sort of bugs here. But yeah, that's basically the gist of it. So yeah, just gonna switch back here. Let's see. Okay. So you can find the code for this script on this URL. I haven't made the backend and the front end public yet. I have some secrets there. I haven't really bothered to fix that. But this is open source, so you can just check how the code is done. And what you can do is you can really just use the client package, and or pretty much just fork this repo, and you can change the backend URL for this, and you can supply your own backend if you want to, and just get the whole screenshot thing for free. So the big question is, can you use this? Unfortunately not. I have been working on a 2.0 for this. There's a lot of design and technical regrets I have in the first version. A lot of state management stuff that doesn't really make the platform very scalable. So I am working on a second version of this that's going to be publicly available, and yeah, you will hear about it when it's released, hopefully. Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, again, virtual applause. Again, a feature Zoom should definitely, people are applauding in the chat, so it's all good. So yeah, thanks so much for that. If anyone's got any questions, then please let us know and type them, and I will ask them. Okay, so the first question is it going to be some sort of SaaS project at the end, basically?
Yeah, I mean that's the goal. This is just a side project of mine, so I mean, time will tell, really.
Yeah. How long has it taken you so far?
Like the first version took me quite some time to get the whole thing like tied together. Probably like a couple of months, and so the second version is going to take some time.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And a question about you said you're using deep AI to compare the images. How accurate is it? Is it too accurate? Is it not accurate enough? How are you finding that? And would you prefer it to be slightly different?
I'm actually finding it really accurate. I have tried just changing small things, like a small color or something like that. And I'm finding it really accurate. I am on the free version, so I'm afraid like in a couple of months it's going to be quite expensive, because I reckon there's a lot of thought that went into this, and they probably deserve more than zero for people using this. Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And have you looked at other things, other packages to use in case?
Yeah, I have looked on a lot of things actually, and I've only really found packages that kind of give you the difference between two images in a third image, but not really like just a numeric value. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And somebody's asked, are you looking for contributors?
Yeah, for sure. Like if you, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, like and the same sort of question. How do people kind of contact you? How do they?
Yeah. So you probably missed the slide where I showed my handle. I don't know. I can probably just type it in the chat so you can find it.
Perfect.
And
yeah.
So as I said earlier, the only thing that's open source now is the actual client library. So I'm going to look into maybe open sourcing the backend and front end of it as well, because that's where most of the actual things are happening.
Nice. Okay, fantastic. Great. Thank you so much for your time and your talk. It was really good, and it's always brave to do a demo, and it worked. So yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah, great job with it, Albin. I look forward to be able to test it on Decibel or other projects. I love the idea.
And one thing that I forgot to mention is that really the next step is to make this possible to work on authenticated routes, because now it will only really work on public routes, since Puppeteer is a completely separate client and it doesn't have access to the authentication tokens that you as a user have. So that's something I'm looking into as well.
Okay, nice. Yeah, a lot of work to come then.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks again, and thanks for giving up your time to tell us about this tonight. It's been really good. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for hosting this meetup as well.
Yeah, so that's it basically, everyone. So thanks so much for coming, and thanks so much for joining us tonight, and thank you to Acast as well for hosting us. It's been fantastic. It was such a good idea, and I'm really glad that we did it. Hopefully we can do some more of these in the next months to however long this is going to go on for. We don't know yet, but hopefully we can do a few more of these, and we can all kind of keep some social contact with each other. But yeah, again, if you have any questions about today's speakers, or you want to get in touch with them, you missed any of the handles, or the Twitter handles, or anything like that, then just message in the meetup, and I'll send you their information. But yeah, with that, good night. Have a good evening, and see you all soon.
Thanks, Becky. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.